Good morning, everyone. We're so glad you're joining us, and welcome to a short discussion about COVID-19 in young workers with some tips about staying safe during the pandemic. My name's Dee Dee Montgomery, and I'm a board member of the Oregon Young Employee Safety Coalition, which we fondly call OYES. Today, we're going to, as I said, share a few things by interviewing Avery Foster. But before we do that, I want to just make sure that you know a little bit about OYES. We've been around for probably about a dozen years. And as you can see on the screen, our mission is really to prevent injuries and illnesses to young workers. And we do this through outreach to lots of different partners, advocacy, and really, most of all, sharing resources that we pull together so that we can all work together to help identify hazards and look for ways to continue to keep everybody safe at work, but particularly young workers. And you can find us on our website, which we'll share again associated with this video. As I mentioned, my name's Dee Dee, and I work at the Oregon Institute of Occupational Health Sciences at OHSU, along with the Oregon Healthy Workforce Center. And you'll see my email address there on the screen, and I certainly would encourage you to reach out to me if you have anything related to this talk or worker safety. And I'm particularly pleased to have with us as a guest today, Avery Foster. Avery is an occupational health consultant with Oregon OSHA. And I'm going to go ahead and stop showing this screen so that we can meet Avery and talk a little bit about this topic today. So first of all, welcome, Avery. We appreciate taking time. We know things are busy right now. What I'd love to do is just, first of all, very briefly, tell us who you are and what you do at Oregon OSHA.
Okay, I'm a health consultant with Oregon OSHA, and what consultation is a free and confidential service throughout the state. So employers call us up and they invite us out to do a variety of things. We help employers identify and mitigate hazards. We help employers develop programs to manage safety and health. And we also identify and monitor employee exposure to health hazards. Basically, we're resources for employers to use to help identify and mitigate hazards in the workplace.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. You know, in our work with OYES and as safety and health professionals at workplaces, we really understand how young and new workers can be at greater risk for workplace injuries, certainly as compared to older or more experienced workers. We also often say new workers sometimes face those same kind of extra risks as young workers. We know part of this is because they're often less experienced and commonly they want to do a good job. We all want to do a good job at work and please the employer. But because of this, you know, sometimes young workers and new workers they're less able to identify a hazard, for example, or a risky situation. What I'm wondering about, are there issues or concerns that you're aware of that are specifically related to the pandemic or COVID-19 work that's been going on, particularly in Oregon right now? And I think as you think about that, you know, I'd love to know specifically to those younger workers. And we often identify younger workers as those who are under the age of 25, or sometimes we include the age 25. So what do you think about that?
Well, I've definitely noticed a few things. One thing is awareness about the chemicals that they're using. This applies to all workers, but specifically young workers. I did go into a facility where the workers had rashes all over their hands and their faces, and it took them so long to realize that it was because of the chemicals they were using. So basically match up the chemical or their exposure with the symptoms. So employees may not be linking symptoms that they're developing with the chemicals they're using. So with COVID specifically, some of the disinfectants cause or aggravate asthma. So this is something I saw at the start of COVID. People were using these disinfectants widely, not realizing that they may be creating a condition that's unsafe for themselves. So we're going to talk a little bit more about ways to prevent that.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you for sharing those. And I think we've often had concerns, particularly about chemicals and exposures like that on the job. So really, do you have, I think that's really the thing I'm wondering is, do you have tips and recommendations for young workers and really for the employers? We work a lot with employers too. So what would you say about all that?
I'd say trust your gut when it comes to any kind of concerns. Make sure to read all the labels on the chemicals. It sounds really simple, but it can prevent a lot of problems. You could also gather the SDSs of the things you're working with and read through the exposures, what it may cause. And we're going to talk a little bit more about resources. Really gather your resources because little things might come up that will spur the knowledge of a hazard that you may not have realized before.
That's great. That's helpful. And I think, another thing we know that's tricky is understanding how to communicate, right? When we have questions at work. And it's something we talk an awful lot about with OES is we don't all automatically understand how to bring up scary issues or things we're really frustrated about. And I'm just kind of curious if you had any other thoughts just off the top of your head around communication. And I've got a couple of things, to share too, but I'd love to know if you had some thoughts on that. And I'll just say, we all know, we've all experienced it. When we ask a question or make a demand in a certain way, it may not be appreciated or respected, right? For what we're really trying to ask. And maybe there's no answer to that, but just an acknowledgement of all of us learning to communicate better, whether we're a supervisor or whether we're somebody reporting to a supervisor.
Yeah, absolutely. I think communication, it's going to be one of our biggest struggles, even in relationships. So it makes sense that you would have that struggle in the workplace as well. So with Oregon OSHA specifically, the reason they came up with safety committee reporting anonymously, or I shouldn't say the reason, but part of that would be to be able to communicate if you don't know how to be able to report it anonymously and have people, the safety committee address a concern. And of course, bringing issues or awareness up to your supervisor and just asking just really open questions like what is this chemical and what are there any signs or symptoms I need to be made aware of? And they may not even know. So yeah, just being really open-minded with those questions. Oh, yeah. So Dee Dee, I know that OES connects with parents. Do you have any tips for parents of young workers?
Yes, I think that we do. Certainly on our website, we have a fact sheet that will put the link out. What we've all learned, and I've learned it just raising my own kids and remembering myself when I was younger. But what we really want to do is help all workers learn to respectfully advocate for themselves. And that can be challenging. So particularly when someone's either younger, newer to the job, feeling really inexperienced, they might need encouragement, right? To understand how to learn, to recognize work. And that's part of the education piece that's really important. To recognize work that endangers them or doesn't provide the proper work protections. And parents, I think, so back to your question, parents really can be a very good sounding block and a source of things for their teen to consider. And it's a fine line. Because we don't want the parent to go take over for the worker in the workplace, ideally, right? Yeah. But yet, I think we do need, as parents, to be there to listen, to help give ideas, to create sounding blocks or be a sounding block. Also, other mentors can really be helpful because sometimes, again, a teen might be uncomfortable to directly communicate with their employer because there is a power difference. And although we try to encourage communication, and employers, I know some great employers that try really hard to break that barrier down, but we might certainly have, besides parents, right, we might have other coworkers who are older and more experienced at the workplace, but might not be the supervisor. We might have teachers and other mentors. And so I think, together we can try to help build that knowledge communication skills and kind of enhance that work support system. And again, I've said it, but I'm going to say it again, is there's a lot for employers to do to really help create that safe and respectful space for conversation and understanding why someone might be afraid to speak up at work. I think that's a really big point. So that's kind of what I would share there for sure. And so, as I mentioned, we do have a tip sheet, right, on that. And I'd ask you, do you have some resources that you'd like to share related to this conversation?
Oh, yeah. So Oregon OSHA has a lot of resources. If you go to our website, A to Z Topic Index, there's a COVID-19 page. There's some training videos that are really, really helpful. They can also, if there's any questions or concerns about something being hazardous, they can also call enforcement with any questions. They can do it anonymously. They're there to answer questions, and it might not be something that's OSHA related. It might be something that's bully, but it doesn't matter. OSHA will tell you where to go and who to talk to. So just understanding that they can have those conversations. It's not we don't in any way discourage it. In fact, we encourage people to call and ask. But yeah, our website has so many resources. And for instance, if they were to want to know about a specific hazard, the A to Z Topic Index, I mean, you can just scroll down and see the hazards that you can, and then each page it just has so many resources. So those are two valuable resources I'd suggest for parents.
Yeah, that's great. And so in the bigger picture, the bigger topic of resources as we kind of conclude here today, I think it's a really important point is that although we're talking about COVID and the pandemic, there are so many other things that we need to pay attention to at work, our traditional safety and health risks, right? Specific to COVID, I know that you all at Oregon OSHA have put a really great training session together, an online training for anybody, any employer or employee on COVID. And I think we'll certainly make sure that link gets out there. It's nice to have that out and available for folks. I would also plug at OES several years ago, we were able to develop about a 45-minute free online training, not specific to COVID, but about hazards at work. And we really encourage all teens to take the time to do that. We encourage certainly teachers and schools. It's a great assignment, a pre-work assignment. It's a resume builder. When someone does complete that, they can then print out a certificate. And we're also working with employers so they can understand that it's, it's out there and to recognize it as a great step to take before someone gets to the job and learns more specifically about safety for that job. Yeah, I don't know if you've had a chance to check out that online training, Avery. We'd love to see your feedback.
I haven't.
Yeah.
I will definitely check it out today, actually. That sounds great.
Well, on that note, do you have anything else to share? I didn't want to cut you off there.
Oh, you're totally good. No, I'd suggest also going to Oregon OSHA's Young Workers page. It talks about some hazards that you wouldn't necessarily immediately identify as hazards. Things like confined spaces, people don't think about if it's not labeled, for instance, especially, but even if it is labeled, don't think that space over there is going to be hazardous. It doesn't look like it'd be hazardous. Why would it be hazardous? Well, it might be hazardous. So it talks about hazards that you wouldn't normally identify. I definitely really want to stress for young workers, of course, give yourself as much information as you can, but also understand that you need to trust your gut. And your gut is one of the biggest resources that you have. If something doesn't feel right or it feels like there's some sort of hazard, talk about it. Try to figure out what's going on, really keep your eyes open. When I started off as a new enforcement officer before I was in consultation, that's what they taught us. They taught us that to trust your gut, and if something doesn't feel right, then go look for the rule or the violation or the hazard. So, but yeah, really use your gut. Of course, we mentioned the website. Oregon Health Authority and the CDC also have some information out there specific to COVID that's really good. And of course, feel free to email me or Dee Dee with any questions, and we're happy. This is what we do. We answer questions, so feel free to give us a call or email anytime.
Terrific, Avery. Great resources and tips today. I guess on that note, I'd like to thank you again for joining us, and to our viewers for taking time to listen. Do, as Avery said, feel free to reach out to us or go to the OES website. We'll have that video contest concluding soon, so we're excited to get word out on that. And with that, goodbye. We'll see you soon.
See you later. Wear a mask.
Yeah, bye.